Hello children, in our last class we discussed about compound sentences, but today we are going to discuss about complex sentences. Before going to discuss about complex sentences, we are going to discuss about the kinds of subordinate clauses. Subordinate clauses are of three kinds. Number one is noun clauses. Number two, relative clauses or adjective clauses. Number three, adverb clauses. Noun clause is a subordinate clause that does the work of a noun. The definition of noun clause. The clause that does the work of a noun is known as noun clause. Take an example. My father said that he was an honest farmer. My father said is a main clause, but that he was an honest farmer is a noun clause. Because here the noun clause begins with that and it is in a object position because the noun clause comes after a verb. Take another example of a noun clause. What you say is right. Here the noun clause begins in the beginning of the sentence. What you say is right. Here the main clause is it is right because if the noun clause or a WH clause used in the beginning of the sentence, the main clause begins with it. So it is right is the main clause and what you say is the noun clause. And if the noun clause is used in the beginning of the sentence, the verb must be singular. Let us discuss about relative clauses. What is a relative clause? The clause that does the work of an adjective. B. The relative clause begins with relative pronoun. For person who or whom, for non-person which or that, for both person and person, non-person, whose is used. Take an example of relative clause. I met Ashok, who is a doctor in Koraput. I met Ashok is the main clause and who is a doctor in Koraput is a relative clause. Here the relative clause begins with who and who is a doctor in Koraput modifies the noun also. That's why relative clause is otherwise known as adjective clause. Let's take another example. Don't sit on the chair which has a broken leg. Don't sit on the chair is the main clause. Which has a broken leg is the subordinate clause, and it is a relative clause because it begins with the relative pronoun which, and which has a broken leg modifies the noun the chair. That's why which has a broken leg is a relative clause. Let us discuss about adverb clauses. What is an adverb clause? The clause that does the work of an adverb. Number B. Adverb clause begins with a subordinating conjunction, or it begins with a subordinating conjunctions such as when, while, before, after, so that, as if, unless, although, etc. Let us take some example of adverb clauses. A. If you work hard, you will pass the examination or exam. Here, the clause begins with if. It is a subordinating conjunction. That's why if you work hard is an adverb clause. But you will pass the examination is the main clause. Shortly it is known as MC. And shortly it is known as SC. Number B. Before I reached the station, the train had left. Before I reached the station is the adverb clause because before is a subordinating conjunction and the train had left is the main clause because it stands by itself. That's why it is MC, and before I reached the station is SC or adverb clause. Let us discuss about complex sentences. What is complex sentence? The sentence that consists of a main clause and one or more subordinate clauses is known as a complex sentence. Take some examples. After the patient had died, the doctor came. Number 2. Although the man is poor, he is happy. C. If you were an elephant, you would live in the forest. A. After the patient had died is the subordinate clause because it begins with a subordinating conjunction after. The doctor came is the main clause, so it is MC. Although the man is poor is a subordinated clause, that is why it is shortly known as SC. He is happy is the main clause. If you were an elephant is a subordinated clause because it has a subordinator if, and you would live in the forest is the main clause. Let us take another example of complex sentence which has two subordinated clauses. The dog that barks at night while it gets dark is mine. The dog is mine is the main clause, but that barks at night is a subordinate clause and it is a relative clause because it modifies the dog, and while it gets dark is an adverb clause and it is also a subordinate clause, and the sentence has two subordinate clauses. That barks at night is a subordinate clause, while it gets dark is also a subordinate clause. Let us discuss some questions. Underline the main clause and circle the subordinate clause. A. When my mother was cooking, my uncle came. Yes. When my mother was cooking is SC. My uncle came is the MC. B. All that glitters is not gold. Yes. All is not gold is the main clause, but that glitters is the subordinate clause. C. Although he studied well, he did not secure good marks. Very good. Although he studied well is the subordinate clause. So we will make a circle, and he did not secure good marks is the main clause. D. Unless he is honest, he will be known to others. Very good. And he will be known to others is the main clause. And unless he is honest is the subordinate clause. E. He said that he was going to Mumbai that day. Very good. The main clause is he said. And the subordinate clause is that he was going to Mumbai that day. Dear students, we discussed about complex sentences today. And from this chapter, we come to know how we will write correct sentences, either in simple, compound or complex. Thank you. Bye-bye.